Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. Hey, everybody. What's going on? What do we have going on today? What are you telling me about?
We got an old one here, and I'm going to need you to buckle up and hang tight on this one.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's a real...
Here we go. What is it going to be? No kids, right?
No kids.
Okay.
I know you
All
get
right.
really happy when I say no kids.
Okay, I'm buckled.
Okay, it's a mystery, and I will leave it to you to see if you can figure it out. Today's story was researched and written by Rebecca Hiers, so thank you, Rebecca. So, let's get into it. This is Season 8, Episode 16, the ongoing story of Dr. Crippen, guilty or innocent. Now, if you are into true crime, and even if you aren't, you have heard of the story of London's Jack the Ripper, a notorious story of murder that is still talked about and still unsolved today. But did you know the second most infamous case from England had its start right here in Michigan? And almost 100 years later, possibly its end. Let's explore the case of Dr. Holly Henry Crippen. Holly Harvey Crippen was born on September 11th, 1862 in Coldwater, Michigan, to parents Myron and Artacy Crippen. He was their second child. Their first child, a daughter, died when Crippen was just 2 years old. The Crippen family was well thought of, and they could trace their family back to the Mayflower. Myron was a prosperous dry goods merchant, and Artacy was a homemaker. The home he was raised in sat on the corner of Grand and North Monroe Streets. It was a large home, speaking of wealth and genteel living typical of the time. The home has since been torn down, and the city's offices stand there now. While still a young man, Holly attended the University of Michigan's homeopathy school, then transferred to the Cleveland Homeopathic Medical College in Ohio, graduating with his medical degree in 1884 at the age of 22. Homeopathic medicine was widely popular in the early and mid-1800s, but by the end of that century, interest would begin to wane. After graduation, he went to New York to practice his medicine. There, he met Charlotte Belle. Now, Charlotte was an Irish immigrant who was working as a nurse in a homeopathic institute when they met. She was 4 years older than him, but the two fell in love and married on December 12th, 1887. In 1889, Charlotte gave birth to their son, Holly Otto. The little family moved around a lot, living in New York, then San Diego, then back to New York, finally moving to Salt Lake City, Utah. It was there, while pregnant with their second child, Charlotte suffered a stroke and died. Although her husband was a doctor, Charlotte was buried in a pauper's grave. Not having the ability, or perhaps not wanting to be a single parent to a small child, Dr. Crippen sent his son to live with his parents, who by this time had moved to California, and he would never see his son again. Dr. Crippen yet again moved back to New York after the death of Charlotte, a tiny, thin man, standing only 5'3" with a bushy mustache, bulging eyes peering from behind rounded glasses, and a receding hairline. He didn't appear to be the type to attract women. And I will testify to that. I saw a picture of this dude. He looks like a human fish. It's interesting. He was also described as being polite and kind, meek and mild, a mouse of a man, but maybe that was his draw. He was non-threatening. While in New York, he met Kunigund Makamatsi. Nice one, Becky. Let me just say she didn't get me on that one. Born in the United States on September 3rd, 1873, to a Russian-Polish father named Joseph and a German mother named Maria, who had dreams of being a stage actress, left home at 16 to follow that dream, but she was not successful. Some reports state she lived in an apartment paid for by a married lover when they met. The two met at some point in 1894 and were married right before the end of the year. There are reports that they met when he performed an abortion on her to protect her married lover, or that he treated a miscarriage for her. Either way, knowing each other less than a year, they married. He was 32, she was 19. As the name she was born with was a mouthful, you can say that again, she went by Corrine or Cora Turner in her personal life. She had dreams of making it big on stage and used the stage name of Belle Elmore. Despite her dreams, attractive, loud, brash, vivacious, outgoing Cora, she had zero talent, and I mean, like none. About the time the two married, a financial depression hit the United States, closing many theaters, including the few that would allow her to perform. As Cora's career faltered, so did Dr. Crippen's. Homeopathy was losing its popularity, and he had to close his medical practice. He obtained a job working for Dr. Munyon, selling what we would call today snake oil. It was a mail-order homeopathy company selling unregulated and sometimes dangerous medicines. As he had a good work ethic, by 1895, he was running their Philadelphia branch. By 1897, Dr. Munyon's mail-order company wanted to open an office in London, and Dr. Crippen was chosen to oversee this endeavor. So, Dr. Crippen moved to London with Cora, staying behind. However, the fun-loving Cora would have a string of affairs while she waited to join her husband in London. By 1900, they were both moved to London, and Cora tried to get her acting career going there. But while popular with other performers, she was not a hit with the audiences. With one performance being so bad, the audience actually threw tomatoes at her. Oh my God, how horrible that would be. Could you imagine having...
Apparently that was the thing to do, though. If you sucked on stage, they threw rotten fruit at you. That was what they did.
I know, how awful. You'd be like, you know what? Hey, pack that bag full of rotten cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes, onions, whatever you got. Bring it with.
Just in case they suck. Bring the garbage. Let's go.
Unreal. That's so mean.
Well, thankfully, that doesn't happen today. So at our live show, we won't have that worry.
Thank the gods. Thank the gods. Nobody better bring any tomatoes. That's it. I'll come after you. I'll dive right off that freaking stage. Okay. All right. Now, about this time, the couple began to drift apart. Belle wanted to live the theater life of late nights and parties and wildness. She loved to spend money and wear fancy dresses and jewelry. The retiring Dr. Crippen did not, but he did support her efforts in becoming an actress. He supported her so much that he acted as her manager. Well, probably because she couldn't get one. It wasn't long before that role would cost him his job with the Munyons. They felt he was neglecting his work with them and let him go. It was at this point Cora's love of extravagant living would start to cause them issues. It cost money to live the extravagant life she loved, and money was one thing they didn't have.
Well, it sounds to me like these two are just perpetual grifters, and they just want to be in the, back in those days, high society or the art society. Either way, it was like, debutante, and they wanted to be part of that even though they were paupers.
Yeah.
Then they were grifters. They were con artists.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, now to make ends meet, they moved to a rented home at 39 Hilldrop Crescent and also rented rooms out to lodgers. The fights over money had become a daily affair, and tension in the house was thick. In 1901, while still working for Munyon's, Dr. Crippen hired an 18-year-old girl named Ethel to work as his secretary. She was a quiet, shy, supportive, retiring girl, the female counterpart to Dr. Crippen, and the exact opposite of his bold and brash wife. The two soon fell in love, but it was an emotional affair. He would later refer to her as his soulmate. Cora, in the meantime, was still having affairs of her own. It's rumored that she even had a fling with one of their lodgers. By 1907, the two had separate bedrooms and began to live separate lives outside of the home as well. Dr. Crippen would try other ways to make money, but his credentials as a physician did not transfer to England, so he began a new career in dentistry. Now, a dental license wasn't required at the time, so with his medical knowledge, it all kind of shook out for him. Ethel came to work with him in his dental practice, and one night in 1906, Dr. Crippen came home early to find Cora in bed with a lodger. Distraught, he fled into the arms of Ethel. Now, he was already emotionally in love with her, but it is now that the physical part of their affair began. Cora knew he was seeing someone but didn't know who. Then, her theater friends began to report to her that her husband was seen out with a woman at dinner. Then, that the other woman was pregnant. Then, that she had a miscarriage. They soon told her the other woman's name, and Cora was incensed. He was having an outward affair with his secretary? And that's a tale as old as time, right?
Of course, that's what they all did. Why is it such a shocker?
Cora was losing her mind over this. Her husband was having an affair with a lesser of a woman than her, and the fighting began in earnest. Cora didn't have what you would call a good career, well, we know that, but she still saw his affair as an affront to her reputation. Their fights were epic. She threatened to destroy his career if he didn't end the affair. It didn't matter to Cora that she was having multiple affairs. What mattered was his affair was causing gossip about her. Described in almost every article written on her as a bully and vindictive toward her husband, the fights were legendary in their circle of friends, and they happened daily. Today, we would call him henpecked, as she started to find fault with everything he did. She criticized him constantly. Now, this was illustrated especially well on the night of January 31st, 1910. That night, the Crippens had guests for dinner, the Martinellis. Clara and Paul were friends of Cora from the theater, and the evening went well until Paul needed to use the bathroom. Dr. Crippen gave him directions to the upstairs bathroom instead of escorting him there, and before the Martinellis left about 1 a.m. on February 1st, Cora began to berate him over this, as the Martinellis had dined with them at least once a week for a long time. It was a bit over the top. Paul should have known where the bathroom was located. It was the last night anyone ever saw Cora again. While an absolute bitch to her husband, Cora was well loved in the theater community, and it wasn't long before people began to inquire as to where she was. At first, Dr. Crippen said she had gone back to America to visit with relatives or to care for a sick relative. As another week passed, he told her friends that she had fallen ill in California while there on business for him and then died. It was a sad story and may have been believed by her friends had he not moved Ethel into the house by the end of February. When Ethel began to wear Cora's clothes and jewelry out in public, her friends went to the police. They also began to call each other husband and wife. Chief Inspector Walter Dew of Scotland Yard had been involved in the unsolved murders of Jack the Ripper in 1888. He had been the first patrolman at the scene of the fifth murder of Jack, and the fact that the killer was never caught stuck with him. He saw it as a black mark against his reputation. But little did he know, he would soon become involved in another equally enthralling crime. Cora had two very good friends, Kate Volcana Williams, who performed on stage as a strong woman. The other friend was Lil Hawthorn, a popular singer of the era. Cora had been elected president of the Ladies Guild, a charity organization that helped struggling actors. Both friends were members, and after the dinner, Dr. Crippen sent a letter to the Ladies Guild stating that Cora had gone home to America and they would need to elect a new president. Kate and Lil thought that was concerning enough to go to the police. They believed that if Cora had left on her own, she would have told them in person. Giving Inspector Dew the letter and discussing the home life of the Crippens, Chief Inspector Dew was persuaded to pay a visit to the doctor. Chief Inspector Dew paid a visit to the Crippen house on July 8, 1910. Ethel was there alone and Dr. Crippen was at work. Inspector Dew went to see Dr. Crippen at his office, and the two of them returned to the house at 39 Hilltop Crescent. Dr. Crippen admitted to Inspector Dew that Cora was not home at the time. He had lied about her leaving for California and dying. He said that he was ashamed to admit it, but that she had left with her American lover, Bruce Miller. He told Inspector Dew it was embarrassing to him that she had left, and that he felt humiliated. At the time, he showed Inspector Dew around the house, including the attic and the basement. Satisfied there was no body hidden anywhere in the house, and extracting a promise from Dr. Crippen to place ads in various American newspapers for Cora to come home, the three went out for dinner, and then Inspector Dew left. On July 9th, Dr. Crippen shaved his mustache, and Ethel packed what they could into a suitcase and left for Brussels, then Antwerp. There, they bought tickets on the Canadian ship, the SS Montrose, under the names of Mr. and Master Robinson, and headed to Quebec, Canada. You see, Ethel dressed as and portrayed herself as a boy, with her hair cut short. The two boarded the ship and set sail, posing as father and son. On the way to board the ship, Dr. Crippen was seen to carry a rather large bag. He did not have the bag with him when he boarded. On July 13th, Inspector Dew had a few more questions for the doctor and paid another visit to the Crippen home. Finding the pair gone, he called for another search of the house. Again, they found nothing. They would return 3 more times, but still the good doctor and Ethel were not home. They tore up the garden and the coal cellar. Now, the 3 visits didn't yield enough, so they paid them a 4th visit. And this is when they found loose bricks in the basement. Removing the bricks, they found a torso with a scar. no head, no arms, no legs, no bones, no sex organs, no internal organs, just a decaying pile of flesh and meat. A boneless torso, you heard that right, a boneless torso wrapped in men's pajamas with some women's clothes nearby. There was one identifying feature on the torso, and that was of a scar, supposedly matched the medical history of Cora. On July 16th, the hunt was on for a killer.
Okay, but we're talking about the 1920s, right? So any medical scar on a torso or an abdomen, I'm thinking cardiac or abdominal, it's going to be the same. Back in the 20s, they used to just slice you down the middle like a gutted fish. To say that it matched Cora right off the bat, I feel like is a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And I'm glad you brought that up, Christine, because you're right. It was one big, incision to get to whatever they needed to. It wasn't pretty.
And it was always like down the middle, and they just gutted you open like a fish. So, I don't know. My brain automatically went to that. As soon as you said with a scar, I was like, yeah, that would match anyone that ever had any medical anything back in that day.
You're totally right.
And if it was a torso, it would have boobies or no boobies. Like, what's the deal?
Right. They didn't talk about the boobs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, good pickup on that. All right, so photo flyers of the suspected killer and his companion were posted all over the place. The captain of the Montrose, Henry Kendall, had seen the posters and watching a couple on the ship grew suspicious. Although they purported to be father and son, they held hands and seemed inappropriately affectionate. Also, the son's clothes seemed to be ill-fitting, and the boy had no facial hair. A scientist named Marconi had just invented the wireless telegraph, and Captain Kendall used it to send the message to London, quote, "Have strong suspicions that Crippen London cellar murderer and accomplice are amongst saloon passengers. Mustache taken off, growing beard, accomplice dressed as a boy, manner and build undoubtedly a girl." Inspector Dew immediately booked passage on the much faster SS Laurentic and arrived in Quebec ahead of the Montrose. Canada at the time was still under British Commonwealth rule. Had the pair sailed for America, they would have had to been extradited to stand trial. But because they had not, Inspector Dew, disguised as a captain, was able to board the Montrose without raising the suspicion of the pair and arrested them both for murder on July 31st. The news hit the headlines around the world. The Ottumwa Daily News from Ottumwa, Iowa screamed, quote, "Crippen and sweetheart taken from Montrose. Worldwide wireless sleuthing secures alleged wife murderer. Famous hunt ends with victory for Scotland Yard." The Auckland Star in New Zealand reported on, quote, "the Crippen sensation." The news made it to Japan, Indonesia, and Jamaica, and every country in between. It was the first time the wireless telegraph had been used to catch a criminal. So this was big news, like huge. Taken back to England, Dr. Crippen's trial was held first. Forensic science was in its infancy, and one of its pioneers was Sir Bernard Spilsbury. Now, Spilsbury testified that a scar was found on a piece of the torso, matched a known surgical scar of Cora's. He also testified the manner of death was by hyoscine poisoning. So here's what hyoscine is. It's also known as scopolamine, or devil's breath. It's a medication used to treat motion sickness as well as postoperative nausea and vomiting, and also used prior to surgery to decrease the production of saliva. Now, it affects the nervous system. This medication can cross the blood-brain barrier, not many can. In higher doses, it has a hallucinogenic effect, causes tachycardia, which is a fast heart rate, arrhythmia, so it's not your normal pattern of your heart beating, blurred vision, photophobia, which is light sensitivity, urinary retention, Cheney-Stokes respirations, which is a pattern of fast, shallow breathing followed by slow, heavier breathing, with moments of apnea, which is no breathing at all. Then it repeats itself. It also causes drowsiness, dry mouth, and stops gastrointestinal motility. Now, none of that is good. The pajama top that was identified as one that Cora had purchased for Dr. Crippen, proving the body had been placed in the basement while he lived there. Hyoscine was also used in asylums at the time to curb the sexual desires of their inmates. Now, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And as discussed, Cora had many lovers. Dr. Crippen had purchased 5 grains of the drug on January 19th. There was no trace of the drug left when the house was searched. It would be brought up in trial that it was believed the bag he had been seen with when he fled contained the head of Cora. The skin with the scar was presented as evidence. Oh man, could you imagine?
That probably stunk so bad.
Girl, stinky.
But they never find the bag with the head. They just assume it's a head. Like, I don't get it.
Only assumption. Yep.
Oh, okay.
All right, I know. All right, now, when it was shown to Dr. Crippen on a soup plate, that's how they presented it, he showed absolutely no emotion. His defense was that Cora had run away with her lover, Bruce Miller. His attorney brought up the fact that the tissue Spilsbury said was the scar tissue had hair follicles in it, something a scar would not and could not have. He insisted it was just a skin fold that Spilsbury misidentified. They said the body was not that of Cora, stating they hadn't moved into the house until 1905. It could have belonged to the previous owner. However, the manufacturing tag proved that this particular set of pajamas hadn't been produced until 1908, when the Crippens did live in the house. However, a body there that long would have already decomposed, so that argument was flawed from the get-go. Cora was known to be a big spender. She loved fancy gowns and expensive jewelry. Now, at the trial, it was brought up that the pair had money issues and some stones from her jewelry had gone missing, perhaps pawned by Dr. Crippen to continue to support his wife and mistress. Or perhaps pawned by Cora to fund her flight. He did everything he could to see that Ethel would go free, insisting throughout the trial that she knew nothing of what had happened to Cora. Now, the trial only lasted 5 days, and the jury debated for only 27 minutes. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. His attorney would later serve time in the same prison for selling a false confession of Dr. Crippen's to the tabloids of the era before the trial even began. He would later be disbarred. Ethel, charged as an accessory after the fact, would be found innocent at her trial, and she was released. After the trial, she moved to Toronto and obtained work as a secretary, changing her name to Ethel Harvey. She moved back to London, where she met a man named Stanley Smith. She and Stanley would marry and have 2 children. She died on August 9th, 1967. Now, she supposedly was buried with a locket containing a photo of Dr. Crippen. Dr. Crippen continued to insist that he was innocent, but there was no overturning the verdict. On November 23rd, 1910, at 9 a.m., he was hanged at Pentonville Prison. He was 48 years old. Per his request, he was buried in an unmarked grave on the prison grounds, with a picture of Ethel and her last 2 letters. In his last letter to Ethel, he said, quote, "Face to face with God, I believe facts will be forthcoming to prove my innocence." Normally, this would be the end of the story, but his words turned out to be more prophetic than even he could know, because the story doesn't end here. Many people were not satisfied with the verdict of the jury. Questions were raised. One question was, if Dr. Crippen had killed Cora, why would he bury only part of her body in the basement? And if the body was in the basement, why would he risk taking Inspector Dew to the basement? It would have smelled horrible. It was July. It was warm. Even months later, it would still stink. Why did it take 4 trips to the house to find it? Why just bury the torso? The torso was buried only under 9 inches of dirt with another 3 inches of brick on top of that. There was no mortar to seal the bricks together, just coal dust and dirt. The smell should have permeated the house, but it didn't, and Inspector Dew found nothing until that last visit to raise his suspicions. A decade after her mysterious disappearance from London, a woman arrived in the States in 1910 named Belle Almore, and that was Cora's stage name, and was living with Cora's sister in New York. Her profession? Well, was a singer. Was it her? Was she afraid to come forward? Was she vindictive enough to stay hidden? Dr. Crippen had embarrassed her in front of her friends, flaunting Ethel in public. It's well known she despised him for that. For years, rumors circulated that she had written to Winston Churchill, then the Home Secretary, claiming she was alive and Dr. Crippen was innocent of her death. Some say the letters are nothing more than rumors. Divorce was hard for a woman to come by at that time. Did she see his death as a way to her freedom, and so she just kept quiet? Well, that's vengeful.
That's also totally psychotic. I mean, so she left all her friends. Where was she for how many years?
In New York with her sister. Remember, they were living in London.
Yeah, so like her friends that started the alarm ringing in the first place, her theater friends went to the police originally. She never said goodbye to any of them. She just ducked out at night. Yeah.
And I'm going to go as far as to say this would have been her best performance ever. Because she was a horrible actress.
Had no talent at all, but now all of a sudden she's in New York being a singer.
Yeah.
That doesn't track.
Well, her acting career, she sucked at it, right? So maybe the girl could carry a tune.
I don't know. This is like hokey pokey. Okay.
Hokey pokey. All right. His son Otto did grow up and marry a lady named Violet. The bear had 1 child who died young. Now, after Violet's death, he married her half-sister, Winifred. Winifred was 13 years older than he was, and Otto died in the 1970s. Some rumors state that, wanting nothing to do with Dr. Crippen, if he and Violet did have any children that lived, they had been hidden to protect them from their grandfather's crime. As Winifred was 54 at the time they married, it is certain the two never had children. Dr. Crippen has cousins still living in Ohio, and they believe he is innocent and want to clear his name. Oh, get this. In 2007, Michigan State University got involved in trying to prove Dr. Crippen's innocence or guilt. Cora never had children, so using census records, birth and death records, and a variety of genealogical tools, maternal relatives were tracked down. The tracking took 5 years to complete. Swabs were taken for DNA. Now, a slide of the tissue found in the basement was sent to MSU for comparison testing. Mitochondrial DNA of her grandnieces and great-grandnieces were tested against each other to show maternal lineage. Mitochondrial DNA is passed through the female line and remains unchanged for generations. If the torso was indeed that of Cora, the DNA from the torso should match the DNA of the living relatives, as all would share a common ancestor of a great-grandmother. Well, guess what? It did not. A nuclear DNA test was also done. This test is used to determine the sex. These tests showed that the torso in the basement was that of a male. It was not Cora in the basement. Which raises another question. Who was it? The mitochondrial testing has been criticized as Cora never had a birth certificate, and if she was, by some account, an unrecorded adoption, which was fairly common at the time, the DNA wouldn't match. But the nuclear testing has not. It was the body of a man. Toxicologist John Trustrail raises the question of why mutilate a poisoned body. Usually, a person is poisoned so it looks like a natural death, and the poisoner can get away with murder. Poisoning a person, then cutting them up and putting parts of the body in your basement is a good way to get caught, especially leaving the one piece of the body that can identify it when all other identification is gone, that abdominal scar. Why take the head and leave that? Is it possible that Dr. Crippen killed Cora and did away with her body elsewhere? Cora's curlers and some hair were found in the basement grave with the body. How did those get there? And Dr. Crippen's pajamas? If he didn't kill her, why flee? Why not stay? Why dress Ethel up as a boy and try to disguise the relationship? He had convinced Inspector Dew she had gone back to America with her lover. Had he not run, he could have probably gotten away with murder. And he had booked third-class tickets. He wouldn't have come to the attention of the captain and could have gone free. Now, over the years, the theory has been raised that stung by their failure to capture Jack the Ripper and facing enormous pressure to solve this case, Scotland Yard planted the body in the basement, knowing it couldn't be determined at the time to be male or female. They knew Crippen killed Cora, but without a body, they didn't have enough to prove it, so they created a body. Maybe an unclaimed body from the morgue, or the body of a homeless person they found on the street.
Or Cora is the real mental patient, and she murdered one of her lovers, which were one of the dorm people that they used to rent rooms to. She killed that sucker, wrapped him in her husband's pajamas, and took off.
I'll get you yet, you son of a gun.
Maybe she was trying to frame him with her murder so she could disappear into the night and become a famous singer in New York. Yep. I don't know, like this whole story is just a bunch of question marks.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. Could be this, could be that, could be this, could be that.
Could be literally anything.
Yeah.
Could have been one of the other people that were renting rooms in the house, killed their lover and ditched them in the basement. And because they lived in the house, that pajama top was available. You know what I mean? Like, there's just too many variables. There's too many people up in that house that you haven't even talked about, except for the fact that you barely mentioned at the beginning that they rented out rooms. But, like, nowhere in the investigation did they talk about all these other people that lived there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Okay, I'm sorry. I interrupted. Go ahead.
That's okay. I love it when you do that. Another unlikely theory is that Cora was born with androgen insensitivity syndrome. Women with this syndrome can present with female genitals and characteristics, but their chromosomes are male. A person can have this condition and not even know it. However, this is highly unlikely. Only 0.005% of the population have this condition. Cora is believed to have had a miscarriage or an abortion at some point. Females with AIS are unable to get pregnant. Another theory is that at some point, even though it was well preserved, Spilsbury's DNA was on the sample and contaminated it, and he is the male profile from the sample. Now,
that's a far jump. I don't know about the guy's DNA, but the androgen sensitivity is kind of like looking for zebras instead of horse footprints as well. But let's just say, back in the day, in the 1920s, how the hell would a woman actually know if she had a miscarriage unless it was like a late-term miscarriage? Because if she would have just hemorrhaged, if she would have had fibroids and had her regular period, it would have been very clumpy, chunky, which to this day, women are still unsure of whether they've passed a fetus or not because their menstruation was so heavy. So all of that is just malarkey. Like all of this medical science back in the 1920s is just complete malarkey. Nobody's DNA was on the slide though.
Right.
Shut up.
Shut up.
Shut up.
Now, they couldn't do any comparison testing on the Spilsbury guy because he self-canceled in 1947. So,
all right. Well, either way, It's them testing all the things. I'm sure they tested more than one sample. And if they came up with the fact that the torso was a male, I don't know. I tend to believe Michigan State University over 1920s scientific workings.
Yeah, agreed. Michigan State's the bomb. All right. Now, there are no clear answers to the questions. We know that. His cousins have petitioned the English government to reopen the case or release the body to them for burial in cold water, but they have so far refused to do either. Cora does have a headstone in the Islington and St. Pancras, sounds like Pancras Cemetery in London. It was erected in 1910. The story started with his birth in Coldwater and fittingly ended with his potential innocence at Michigan State. Full circle of Michigan connection. Given the evidence, what do you think happened?
Oh, God. Given the evidence, it's a bunch of malarkey. It's all over the place. Come on. This is as clean cut as, I don't know. There's nothing clean cut about any of this, including the scar on the torso.
Agreed.
But none of this really jives. But I think it's a shame because it does point out to how many innocent people have been convicted of murders and how many murderers have gotten away scot-free because of all of this. Because let's just say that he's innocent. Then who killed whoever that torso belonged to? That guy got away free. That guy's in the clear. He killed some young man, or she actually, because could have been Cora herself.
Yeah.
Killed her lover and then took off. Oh. But she had to be she had to be a way better actress than anyone ever gave her credit for if she pulled off completely living a false life.
Yeah.
That's good acting.
Yeah.
So maybe her no talent self actually had some talent.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. I think Cora set him up because she's like, how dare you? You know, if you're going to leave me, you better one-up me kind of a thing, right?
Yeah. She's a psycho.
Yeah. Also the ultimate revenge.
I don't know. This is a crazy one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listeners, let us know what you think because I just think this whole thing is malarkey.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah. Definitely leave us a comment, you know, and if you're listening on any platform that allows you to like, share, leave a comment, please do that. We'd love to hear what you guys think is the real deal. What really happened here? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That's our show for today. And we will see you guys all back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.